All right, here we go. We're going to go ahead and put our gauges on our tanks. We're going to do the oxygen here. When you're running soft metals, brass, copper, that sort of thing, when you have threaded fittings, you want to run those fittings up all the way up as far as you can by finger. That way you don't cross thread them and have to replace your regulator. Not that anybody in this room has done that. Okay. We're going to go ahead and tighten down on our oxygen. Don't need very much because it's got a compression fitting in there. We're going to go ahead and put our settling gauge on, our settling side over here. Again, you run it up as far as you can by hand. Use a crescent wrench on any of your soft metal fittings. Get in the habit of do that. Do not use channel locks. You will strip the bolts over a period of time and it just looks silly. Be professional. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hook up our hoses onto our regulators. So here we go. We're going to thread that up. Oh, the wrong way. It is threaded backwards. Go ahead and get it threaded all the way up. Put our settling over on this side. Get our hose going there. Run it all the way up with our fingers because it's soft metal on soft metal. Easy to cross thread. That's all we got. Take our crescent wrench. Snug it out. Snug it out. Alright. Now we'll go ahead and put our torch head body right here. Hose for oxygen. Roll my thread up. Run it all the way up. Brass to brass, soft metal. Settling side. Put it on there. Just going to thread backwards. Just like that. And we're going to run threads all the way up. Now I'm going to pick a number 1 tip. And this is Victor number 1 tip. Number 1 is on the tip itself right there. So we know what size tip we're using. And for the small residential, commercial, say under 10 tons, number 1, number 2 tip will do you fine. When you get into the larger commercial stuff, when you're dealing with the 1 1/8, 1 3/8, 1 1/4 copper, 1 1/2 copper, you might want to go with a rosebud type tip. Gives you more flame, gets you hotter quicker. Okay, we're all set up here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set our regulators for a number 1 tip. And if everybody throws this little book away, and I do not know why, because this comes from the torch manufacturer, and it tells you what pressures to set your tips at. It says we're at a number 1 tip. It says that oxygen should be between 3 and 5, and the settling should be between 3 and 5. It's in the book. So, that means operating pressure. These regulate the pressure coming out of the tank. You don't want to overpressurize your tip. These parts here control the flow. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our service wrench. We're going to come over here. We're going to open up the settling side. We're going to open up our oxygen side. This gauge here and this gauge here tells us tank pressure, how much pressure is in these tanks. We have adequate pressure from what I see on our regulator gauges, that we're going to have adequate pressure to do quite a bit of brazing when we want. This side here sets up the pressure for your tip. And in the book it says for number 1 tip, which we have on here, and it says number 1 on the tip, we're going to set our pressure feeding our tip between 3 and 5. What's between 3 and 5? 4. Okay. That means with the valve open. So what we're going to do is we're going to dial this in, and we see our little needle moving up, and there's 5 on the inside dial. I'm going to set that up to 4. We're going to crack it open. Bring the pressure up just a hair. We're done. You just set your pressure for that tip on your settling side. Just do the oxygen side. You want to dial it in until we start getting a little pressure. That little knob right there should be 10. So we want to be just about halfway. Bring it up a little bit. All right. Pressure's set on our regulators, feeding our tip to what it calls for on the tip.